Hi, I'm Yolande Poirier from Oracle Technology Network, and I'm here at Devoxx interviewing Johan Vos. Johan, hi.
Hi.
And Jim, who will help me with the questions as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So Johan, tell us what you do.
I'm the CTO of LodgON, which is a small Belgian software company. We focus on social media applications in Java, end-to-end Java, from the backend Java Enterprise Edition and front-end, sometimes web applications, sometimes JavaFX applications.
So I've heard you are a JavaFX fan, so tell us how you use JavaFX.
Well, we try to use it in as many projects as possible. And the moment that we have a customer that agrees with having JavaFX, we couple our DALI Core backend, which is a framework, an open source framework that we created, and that adds the concept of users, content, data, integration with social media on top of Java Enterprise Edition. We couple that framework with a JavaFX client, where we use the JavaFX controls to visualize all the data that's available in an application, and especially in applications that connect with social media like Facebook, Twitter, and so on.
Wow, very impressive. So you have really clients who will have JavaFX as a result of it. So give us an example of a client that you work for.
Okay, one of the clients that's using JavaFX in production now is Cultuurnet Vlaanderen, which is an organization of the Flemish government. They have a badge system where everybody can gain points when they attend events and so on. They can also share this on Facebook and whatever. And at a number of events, they have registration desks that are laptops with an NFC reader, and that contains a JavaFX application. So the people, they swipe their badge at the NFC reader, and it's immediately recognized. So the JavaFX application talks to the backend. We know who it is. We know how many points he already had. We can also give some suggestions for that person, and that person can then check in or eventually find out who else is at the same location or what other events might be interesting for him.
You know, one of the things that you may not know, Yolande, about Johan is that four of us wrote a Pro JavaFX book a couple years ago, and we updated it for JavaFX 2. And as we were going through the writing process, there were some pieces that were missing and we were a little bit behind on. But there were also areas of expertise that were missing in the authoring team. And so, because of my relationship with Johan, we asked him, can you help us with the enterprise chapters? Because Johan has a deep background on the EE side, on the, Glassfish and those kinds of things. So can you help us with the web and enterprise chapters? And so, Johan, you must have dropped everything you were doing, because literally in 3 weeks he was able to write that chapter of the book and saved our publishing deadline. And so I'm very deeply indebted to Johan for that.
And I did a chapter on the charts as well afterwards.
That's right. No, that was very good.
But yeah, I think it's quite an important piece of JavaFX. How do you connect the JavaFX client application to a Java EE backend? Because that's where the data is, and that's where lots of the value, especially the business value, is. So connecting the JavaFX client with the enterprise backend is, I think, quite important.
Well, you have a philosophy. Now, Johan has a doctorate in applied physics, I believe. Is that true?
That's correct. Applied physics, yes.
Okay, good.
Can you believe that?
Yes. No, that's very good. And but you have this kind of holistic philosophy that you've expressed before about the relationship of client and server with another kind of larger philosophy that you have. And I was wondering if you could kind of go into that.
You mean the small connecting the world of the small with the world of the large things? Well, yeah, actually that's the thing that really interests me in physics is how do you combine the relativity theory, which is the world of the extremely large stuff like stellar systems and so on, with quantum mechanics, the world of the small things, and that's the grand unified theory, the holy grail of physics. And I think in Java this translates to how can you connect the backend servers, the exalogics, and the expensive resources that you have in backends with the small devices like tablets, phones or embedded devices running a Raspberry Pi, and so these are two completely different worlds, but they have one thing in common, and that they both run Java. So the challenge is, it's Java in one world and Java in another world. So you need to be careful when you connect these two worlds. But I think that's one of the most important things in computing today. How do we connect the part where the real enterprise value is with the part that the end user uses, the consumer?
You're a member of the Glassfish community. What are some of your experiences been there lately in the Glassfish community?
Yeah, one thing that I noticed, and I'm very happy with that is an increased interest in REST interfaces.
Okay.
Because in the past, web frameworks were rising as champions, and every day there was a new web framework. And you can use web frameworks to create websites, no problem with that, but it creates a dependency on that particular framework. So the good thing about REST interfaces, and the JAX-RS API provides a standard for that, is that you create your application and you don't care how it's going to be used by the front-end developer. So it can be used with a web application, but it can also be used with JavaFX, for example. And one of the projects, an open source project that I created together with Jonathan Giles, which is called DataFX, what we do there, it's a JavaFX client that connects to any REST-based backend. And I think the good thing of the evolution of the enterprise standard is that REST is becoming more important, and JAX-RS 2.0 builds on top of JAX-RS 1. And it's an evolution that I see, and I'm pretty happy about it, decoupling the output format from the business logic.
Do you have more questions, Jim?
Oh, I've got lots of more questions for Johan. Would you like me to ask them?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, very good, very good. Well, one of the things that, like I said, Johan and I are good friends, and we have a professional relationship over the last several years. And he has, I've mentioned how he's bailed me out before on the Pro JavaFX book. More recently, for the Devoxx conference, he developed this application. We kind of collaborated on it. I wrote the specs, and Johan worked tirelessly on a short deadline to implement those specs. But what it was an application that would render Twitter tweets that would represent presentation slides. So the idea is that, you know how there's this syndrome of death by PowerPoint, right? Where too many bullets on slides. So the idea is that if you could if you're limited to 140 characters in a slide and maybe a graphic, then that would do the world a lot of good in not having to suffer through slides that are way too complicated. So that's the idea. So I relayed that to Johan. He really liked it and thought it would be a good idea to implement that for my presentation at Devoxx. And so he created this application in JavaFX, and with this DataFX infrastructure open source project that he talked about, and implemented that in time for my presentation so that I could express my slides as tweets that then are read in by the program and then displayed as you would see it in PowerPoint on my presentation. So it was a really, really nice thing that he did for me.
And actually I didn't have to write lots of code, because with the two things I already mentioned, DataFX did the connection to the backend, and with DALI Core we have the connection with Twitter, because if your account is private, you can't really tweet, so you need to be authenticated. It's often a complicated process, but that's with DALI Core, and we host it at DALI Cloud. It's a no-brainer, so no code required for that. And for getting the tweets in your application, we use DataFX, so no code required as well. So nice. We had a few lines of code for visualizing it and making sure that you could click left and right for getting the next and previous slide or reload it. Mm-hmm. So you can really focus on your business logic, on the code that's specific to your project.
I gotcha. Good. Well, I do appreciate your help in that.
Very welcome.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming and talking to us about what you're doing with JavaFX. This is very impressive. So
Thanks,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.